Hey guys, back with another video. So today I want to do a little bit of a refresh off of Lyte gaming PCs because my channel's gotten a lot more exposure from it from the first part, and I think I left a couple things out that I think are very important. And they've updated their site a little bit with notable feature that I'd like to cover here. And just talk about the company as a whole and kind of brush over things that I didn't cover and really kind of look over if you should buy them or not, because a couple of things have been brought to light that I don't necessarily know where different people would sit depending on what they would want for their PC. So to start off, I didn't really cover the site as a whole. Now, for a lot of people, the site doesn't really matter, but I think that especially if you're a tech company and if you're making PCs, you want to make things look as professional as possible. You don't really want to have kind of this, half-ass attitude that they have, especially in the commercial. If you guys have ever seen the commercial, it's just kind of like they try to play on humor, and I respect that, but it really looks like they're trying to make this persona as if they don't care, whereas with a computer, you really want them to care when they're putting it together. A computer has to be reliable, and it can be a fire hazard, especially if you're getting an unbranded PSU, and that's like the one thing that I do want branded, but it's not. They'll name the core and specs of every other part, NVIDIA GTX 1050, but they won't talk about the PSU, most likely because they're sourcing them from pre-builts. And that's kind of the first thing I'll get to after I get to other site features. So the other thing, we'll go to this computer because I was given a comment by someone else who wanted me to take a look at this one, so we'll look at it. So first off, the Photoshop is not that great. I'm not really sure what the branding of it's going to be, because we know it's Zalman on this page, and then on the front it's Lyte gaming PCs. So as far as Photoshop goes, it wasn't that great, but I'm not going to ding them on that. It's just weird because I would think that they would want to take pictures of their machines, their own machines, instead of sourcing it from a different website and just photoshopping it on for them. I feel like if they wanted to bring a genuine sense of presenting their product to customers and saying this is what you're getting, and our products are good, I definitely would want a company to show their own pictures instead of just ripping them from some other site, because this is what people on Craigslist, people on OfferUp do. They just rip it off of the Amazon site so that you don't really have to see all the dust and grime that's built up in them, or some of the imperfections. So it's kind of almost like if they're hiding something. Now again, they have customer reviews. I'm not really going to look at them because customer reviews don't really mean anything, at least in my experience. Like, I've ordered products that are great and they've had bad customer reviews and vice versa. So there's that. But another huge feature that they added was this. And it's basically, photoshopped Acer monitor that they put in here. But they have different games that they put on here that you can check the FPS on. And my first thing was like, wow, they are getting really high frame rates when they are, looking at these games. But when you kind of look at what they're putting in here, like, this is GTX 1050 Ti, which is a bit different from the GTX 1050. If they're basing their specs and their FPS off the same thing, then they should kind of correlate, but they don't. They're using the FPS from the 1050 Ti. They're not using it from a 1050 benchmark. And it's just kind of like, okay, I see what you're doing. And also, they're using an FX 6300, which I don't know how much different performance you're going to get between that CPU and the Intel one. But again, it's just kind of looking a little bit more shady as things are going on. Now, this might just be a error where the guy was just trying to put in random videos and forgot to, put on the or to check that there's a TI behind it. Or again, it might be something that's intentional. In that case, they're trying to basically falsify their performance that they're getting on their PCs when realistically, in Modern Warfare in 1080p low settings, you're gonna get maybe 60 FPS on that graphics card. Like, I'd expect it more from 720p, you'll get 60 FPS, but maybe 1080p, especially Modern Warfare, it's a little bit more of a demanding game. So I would see, if it's at 1080p, I would see more 30 to 50 FPS rather than 60 to 90. And same thing with all these games. I mean, Fortnite might be a little bit debatable because it's a lot more optimized than it was when it originally launched. I mean, that's with all these games. They're higher than they should be because they're based off of a 1050 Ti. And I don't think that the benchmarks are as great as they should be. Now, again, we'll go to the power supply. All these things are nice, right? They talk about everything that they have on here. They talk about the OEM, like it's an OEM source motherboard, okay. But the power supply they never talk about. It doesn't have a rating, so I assume it's going to be pretty dodgy. I would rather them charge me more money for a better power supply than anything else. Because a power supply is literally one of the only components in your PC that can actually cause a fire and completely kill any and all components in your computer. It's, you know, it's the thing that is dictating how much power is going to go to different parts. And if that thing fails, your whole entire system is going to die, and you might not know why, because I assume if you're buying from this company, you're not going to know a whole lot about computers. Now, I think that as far as specs go, right, I think what they choose is great for their margins, but I don't think it's as optimal as it could be for performance. I think that they could get a lot better performance out of using a different graphics card. Maybe they are stuck with using these Core i3s, this 8 gigs of RAM, and this OEM motherboard. Because again, that might be what they're stripping from these OEM machines. But I think that they could be using RX 570s. RX 570s can be found for dirt cheap on eBay. They're not that expensive anymore after the the Bitcoin craze. People were buying RX 570s all the time. So in the performance of an RX 570 over a 1050 is a lot higher, and an RX 570 is actually $129 right now, whereas they are pricing this NVIDIA GTX 1050 at $120, which is how much a GTX 1050 kind of costs, but because RX 570s are in such high supply, you can get them for a lot cheaper. So if they just want to boost the SPF numbers, oh, I can't even talk, FPS, sorry. If they just want to boost those FPS numbers in general, they just need to give you a better graphics card, and they wouldn't be dipping into their margins that much. Again, give us a reputable power supply. If you're going to pay an extra $25 for a better power supply, because this is already $35, you can get a decent EVGA, or the lowest in EVGA power supply for $35. If you would go up to the $50 range for how much that would cost, I would be fine with that, because a 400 watt power supply with no efficiency rating and no branding is not going to make me very comfortable to upgrade this computer in the future, and this is a computer that does need upgrading. Upgrading this to a Core i7 a couple years down the road, upgrading this to any sort of GPU that requires, a 6-pin, 8-pin, or dual 8-pin connectors, is going to stress this power supply a lot. So just bringing up the wattage, bringing up the efficiency rating, and giving us a brand would allow people to be more comfortable with buying these PCs. The case is not a big deal or anything, but, I don't know. Now, I think I built this, this PC part list for the average person, and I listed everything in here to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think that as far as what they're doing in terms of, putting computers together and using the right parts is something that they're lacking. It's not just throwing parts together that is going to make a good computer. It's picking the right parts for the right system. So they are only taking a 500 gigabyte hard drive, which is fine. $30 hard drive is, what I actually have in here. Actually, it's a little bit cheaper than that. But I think if they would add a 16 gig module of an Intel Optane, it would massively improve the performance of the machine. I assume it's going to have an M.2 slot. I assume since it's an Intel CPU, it's going to run Intel Optane. If it doesn't, then get a smaller SSD and just use it as a boot drive. I don't think any computer nowadays should be running as a boot drive from a 500 gigabyte hard drive. Nobody should be running a hard drive as their boot drive. It's 2020, and I don't know why they'd be selling a machine like this. Again, it's $400, so I'd give them a little bit of slack for that. Now, I think that as far as, CPU goes, I think they're fine with that. What I've chosen here is an AMD Athlon ASRock A320. We got 300 megahertz, 8 gigs of RAM, and then we've got all the other parts, case, power supply, and we've got a wireless adapter, which I don't know. Does this thing have wireless on it? And I should probably know that before. It most likely doesn't. And that's because, and this is the other thing, they're reviewing their own PCs. I don't understand this. If you wanted people to review your PCs, send them out to independent reviewers, send them to someone that might want to test out the machines, and give them an honest review. In that way, you can kind of control a sample that you're sending to them, which, again, isn't necessarily the best thing, but at least people can see what they're buying. By you doing your own review, it's trying to put it in the best light, and people aren't going to trust it. Even if it is kind of a fair review, or maybe if you're showing all the parts of it, even its faults and its advantages, because it's coming from you, it's not going to be, the unbiased opinion that people are going to want from people who, might be reviewers who are, known for being honest about the products that are coming out from different companies. I think that's about it. Again, if you are shopping for any of these computers, do not look at this thing, because the parts are wrong on a lot of these. A lot of them that say 1050, it is benchmarked with the 1050 Ti. 1050 Ti is a 4 gig card, and it's going to give you a lot better VRAM and GPU, just usage in general. You're going to get a decent amount more performance from a 1050 Ti than what they're actually using, which is a 1050. Again, as far as everything else, I would not buy a high-end machine from this company. I would actually, go to a different OEM, because there's a lot better companies that are building stuff for higher prices for better value. And if you're just wanting the budget for the best bang for buck, don't buy an OEM PC. I've got a couple videos, I think, up on the channel. I'll link them up top if if you guys want to check out what a PC is like, what parts you should pick for it and stuff. This is a great PC. For anyone who wants to spend $450 on a PC and build it themselves. You got the RGB, you don't need this, so it'd bring it down to a $400 machine, right? You don't need the RGB. You have your Intel Optane, right? You've got your TP-Link, and then you've got your AMD, all your stuff that you would need. That's going to be the end of the video. Thank you guys for all the support, for my new subscribers. And that's the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Comment down below your thoughts, any criticisms that you guys have in these videos. I've got a lot more stacked up this week. I was sick this whole weekend, so I was able to write a couple scripts out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.